I knew I was open, but I just thought I was a little bit far. Try to take one dribble closer, attack.
I'm not sure. I mean, obviously you have to ask Luka what he saw on that, but I thought he had a good look, and it looked like he kind of just lost his balance. You know, didn't have a rhythm with the ball, whatever the case may be.
It was be a tough opportunity.
I mean, I just saw him open. I didn't want to lose the ball, and we didn't have timeouts, But like I say, shouldn't have picked up the ball. I should attack. I thought I was getting a clean look, but that's.
All right, so it seems like Luka and LeBron weren't necessarily on the same page, Brian. We hear the reaction all over Los Angeles, but what was yours?
Okay, so this was we didn't have the full play on there, but JJ Redick sort of ran a football play. He had all the players in the backcourt. They ran like a wide receiver bunch formation. It's a great design. DeAndre Ayton throws one of the best screens you're ever going to see. He actually screened two guys. It's brilliant. But I will just point out, let's say he takes that shot, okay? It's like 28 feet. 25% he makes
Down
it?
one.
It's not like it's a wide open layup.
But I don't think the problem is that I think if he took it and missed it, nobody would have had a problem with it.
Well, I don't have a problem with it anyway because the Lakers didn't lose the game on this play. They gave up 60% shooting in the fourth quarter. Yeah. You mentioned Austin Reeves failed to block out the previous possession. If Austin Reeves just blocks out, they get a rebound.
But look at this right here. Luka has a wide open look, and I can understand in a solitary environment with this one game, he's shooting 2 for 10 from 3. Your confidence is probably not all the way there on knocking down a 3-point shot to win the game. But even bigger than that, it's more so the mindset. Like, we have known Luka Doncic to be that alpha dog, to want that moment. And I do believe the floor was a little bit cramped, but it begs the question, LeBron in some ways deflecting like, hey, I felt like Luka had a good look. But Luka's like, well, clearly two people, even when I thought about shooting, it reacted to me and I needed another option. It just sort of is a microcosm of the Lakers season so far. As Wendy said, and yes, this is the number that I was looking for. Luka hasn't even shot. This is one of the best clutch teams in basketball. They were 13-0 to start the year in clutch time. Yeah. I think they've wobbled as of late. But he has not even shot or attempted in this scenario in the fourth quarter or OT this season. Whereas other people have. And to me, that's
Austin Reeves looking pretty good.
He's looking real good. 2 for 2, baby, 100%. When you start 13-0 in clutch time, maybe you feel like, okay, the mindset is I can get other people going and they can knock down that shot. Okay. But they have not had that same record in clutch time games as of late, which means you expect him to regain to that form. But this is just a different system here. He thrives in systems where he knows he's going to be that alpha, but now he's deferring in some ways that we are not accustomed to. Maybe because he's playing alongside and thinking of LeBron.
I'm going to go a couple minutes before that shot. And Brian's watched this since the dude was a teenager. There's not many players in the NBA that close games better than LeBron James. And in the 1 to 2 minute mark, Luka shot a 3, Austin shot a 3. LeBron James is standing over the side with Desmond Bain guarding him. He's taller than Desmond Bain, 50 pounds heavier, and he's there while they're doing this one-on-one. And I think as great as Luka is, I want the ball in the LeBron James hands because he could take the ball to the basket, pass out to Luka, pass out to Austin. I don't think he should have taken the ball out at the end of the game. I think he should have got the ball at the end.
You're talking about the margins that are sort of, that's what you were saying before that.
And he's a great closer, and he didn't get a chance to close.
The strange thing is that when LeBron, Luka, and Austin Reeves are on the court together this year, the Lakers are actually a terrible offensive team. Not subpar. Genuinely bad. And it doesn't make sense because these guys are all awesome scorers. In fact, when Luka and Reeves are on the court together, they're like, per 100 possessions, they're like plus 12. When the three of them are on the court together, they're minus 8. That's a 20-point spread. Right. When LeBron is on the court with any other 4 Lakers besides Luka and LeBron, or Luka and Reeves, they're plus 7.5 over 100. That's a great thing. These 3 guys have similar skill sets. And they crash into each other. If they had another 500 minutes, 1,000 minutes to play together, maybe it wouldn't be the case, but they haven't had that luxury.
It sounds a little silly, but in my brain, I'm saying, do they respect each other too much? We've seen situations, especially at the start of the year, where Austin Reeves was carrying the Lakers. Then you go over to LeBron having this run that amounts to him being an all-star. And everyone knows 2 or 3 years ago, LeBron James said, hey, I'm not the franchise guy. It's actually Anthony Davis. And Anthony Davis is no longer here. This is clearly Luka Doncic's future. And so in those moments, maybe you expect, based off off of what the built-up system has been for Luka to take over. But at the end of the day, it's like the shot was wide open. He could have taken it. Why? What's the hesitation? JJ Redick has to fix that mindset.
Right, and LeBron James is saying, okay, maybe he was a little bit off balance in that moment, and so he passed it to me.
On him.
So, but as we saw in the Open, there's several times in which this is kind of the shot that he at least takes and oftentimes makes. But cue up the song, the Orlando Magic, for all the executing that the Lakers did not do, they were able to take advantage, Mark.
And they've won 6 of their last 8.
Don't look now. The Orlando Magic, this is what they were envisioning when they brought in Desmond Bane to be able to come up
Better
in
late
those
than
big
never,
moments.
sis.
Better late than never.
Alabama Carroll.
Always on time. Hey, coming up here on NBA Today, how about Buzz City? They've been buzzed.
Look, if you've somehow managed to survive being a devoted Los Angeles Lakers supporter through this absolutely mind-bending stretch of the 2025-26 season without requiring intensive psychological counseling, developing stress-induced cardiovascular complications, or seriously reconsidering every major life decision that led you to voluntarily subject yourself to this particular brand of organized emotional warfare disguised as professional basketball entertainment, then you deserve recognition for possessing the kind of emotional fortitude typically reserved for hostage negotiators, individuals who voluntarily choose to watch reality television marathons during natural disasters while maintaining their sanity, people who somehow manage to work customer service during holiday shopping seasons without developing homicidal tendencies, and perhaps most impressively, those brave souls who still believe that cryptocurrency advice from social media influencers represents sound financial planning. Because what we've witnessed recently isn't just basketball gone temporarily wrong, it's a comprehensive masterclass in how the most talented roster in the Western Conference can somehow transform every winnable game into a psychological thriller that ends with Lakers fans questioning their life choices, their loyalty, and quite possibly their understanding of basic mathematics, since apparently holding double-digit leads means absolutely nothing in the current Lakers universe, where momentum shifts faster than a day trader's portfolio during market volatility. But here's the thing that all these so-called basketball analysts, talking head experts, and fair weather supporters seem to conveniently ignore when they're busy writing premature obituaries for this Lakers season while completely missing the bigger picture that's unfolding before their eyes. Isn't it fascinating how quickly people forget that championship teams are built through adversity? Tested by exactly these kinds of challenging stretches, and ultimately defined by how they respond to temporary setbacks, rather than how they perform when everything is going perfectly according to plan. Especially when you consider that this organization has more championship DNA running through its veins than most franchises have accumulated in their entire existence. And the timing of these struggles couldn't be more perfect from a long-term development perspective, occurring during a season when the organization is simultaneously celebrating its illustrious championship heritage while building toward another title run with a roster that possesses more raw talent than 90% of the league's so-called contenders, who somehow get praised for doing exactly what this Lakers team does better when all the pieces align properly and external. Circumstances aren't working against them through completely uncontrollable variables that have nothing to do with effort, preparation, or championship potential. Before we dive deep into this latest chapter of what uninformed critics are calling Lakers struggles, but what any intelligent basketball observer would recognize as a team working through the natural growing pains that occur when elite individual talents are learning to maximize their collective potential while dealing with injuries, roster adjustments, ownership transitions, and the kind of external noise that championship organizations use as motivation rather than distraction. Make sure you absolutely demolish that like button with the fury of someone who's tired of listening to casual basketball fans who probably couldn't identify a proper screen and roll if their lives depended on it. Attempting to analyze the strategic complexities of building a championship roster in the most competitive Western Conference in NBA history, where every single game matters and the margin for error is essentially non-existent. Now, let's talk about the broader context of this Lakers season. And here's a question that none of these amateur analysts seem capable of answering with any degree of intellectual honesty. Why exactly are we holding this team to completely unrealistic standards that we wouldn't apply to any other franchise in the league, particularly when you consider that they've been dealing with more roster turnover, injury complications, schedule disadvantages, and organizational changes than virtually any other playoff contender, while still managing to maintain a competitive position in the Western Conference standings that most teams would gladly accept? The fact that we're approaching March and people are somehow surprised that a team featuring multiple new additions, players returning from significant injuries, a coaching staff implementing refined systems, and a front office navigating ownership transitions might need time to reach their absolute peak performance suggests a fundamental misunderstanding of how championship basketball actually works in the real world, rather than the fantasy basketball scenarios that exist only in video games and the imaginations of people who have never experienced the physical, mental, and emotional demands of competing at the highest level of professional sports, where consistency requires months of repetition, trust building, and systematic development that can't be rushed or manufactured through wishful thinking. I believe this pattern of so-called inconsistency becomes significantly less mysterious when you actually examine the context surrounding each individual performance, rather than simply looking at box scores and making superficial judgments about effort or ability. Because watching players like Rui Hachimura navigate through what lazy commentators are calling struggles, but what any reasonable basketball observer would recognize as a talented shooter, working through the kinds of temporary rhythm disruptions that affect every single player in the league when they're not receiving sufficient shot attempts. Proper offensive positioning, or the kind of systematic support that allows elite shooters to maintain their confidence and aggressive mentality throughout extended stretches, when the basketball gods decide to test their mental toughness and professional resilience through circumstances that have more to do with offensive distribution and coaching philosophy than individual capability or preparation quality. Here's what's really happening with Hachimura's recent performances, and pay attention because this is the kind of basketball insight that separates informed Lakers supporters from casual observers who probably learned everything they know about basketball from watching highlights on social media. He's been oscillating between absolutely lights-out shooting performances where he demonstrates exactly why he's considered one of the most reliable three-point shooters in basketball over the past 3 seasons, and completely understandable adjustment periods, where he's learning to fit into refined offensive sets, adapt to different defensive schemes designed specifically to limit his effectiveness, and find his rhythm within a system that continues to evolve as players return from injuries and coaching staff optimize rotations for maximum effectiveness against increasingly sophisticated opposition scouting reports. Going from 9 of 13 shooting against Dallas to 3 of 12 against San Antonio isn't evidence of inconsistency. It's proof that he's human and occasionally experiences the same temporary shooting variance that affects literally every professional basketball player, including superstars like Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, and every other elite shooter who has ever played this game at the highest level while dealing with the mental pressure of performing in crucial moments when every miss gets analyzed and criticized by people who probably couldn't make a contested three-pointer if they had unlimited attempts and perfect shooting conditions. But here's the question that these critics conveniently refuse to address with any degree of analytical rigor. Why isn't Hachimura receiving the shot attempts necessary to maintain the kind of rhythm, confidence, and aggressive mentality that allows shooters of his caliber to work through temporary slumps rather than allowing them to develop into extended periods of self-doubt that impact every aspect of their performance and team chemistry? Especially when the statistical evidence clearly demonstrates that he's shooting an elite percentage from three-point range, but lacking the volume necessary to truly impact games and provide the spacing that this offense desperately needs? The frustrating reality about Hachimura's situation is that he's clearly demonstrated the ability to be exactly the kind of complementary scorer this team needs. Someone who can provide consistent offensive production without requiring elaborate offensive sets, taking touches away from primary creators, or disrupting the flow of an offense that works best when players understand their roles and execute them with precision, professional confidence, and the kind of aggressive mindset that separates good shooters from great shooters who can perform consistently under pressure. Thinking about it objectively and without the emotional bias that seems to cloud the judgment of people who apparently started watching basketball last week, Hachimura should absolutely be attempting 6 to 8 three-point shots per game, rather than the 4 attempts he's currently averaging, because elite shooters like himself require repetition, rhythm, and the green light from coaching staff to be aggressive, even when shots aren't falling immediately. Just like every other successful three-point specialist in NBA history, who built their careers on taking and making high-volume attempts rather than waiting for perfect circumstances that rarely exist during competitive basketball games, where defenses are specifically designed to prevent easy scoring opportunities and force shooters into uncomfortable situations that test their mental toughness and professional confidence. The recent acquisition of Luke Kennard represents exactly the kind of strategic move that demonstrates this organization's commitment to addressing specific roster needs while adding proven talent that can contribute immediately to championship aspirations. But here's what makes this addition particularly interesting from a basketball perspective. Kennard brings the exact shooting pedigree and professional approach that could help unlock not just his own potential, but also create better opportunities for players like Hachimura by forcing defenses to account for multiple elite shooters, rather than focusing their attention on limiting one primary threat. The fact that Kennard is already demonstrating his value despite minimal time to integrate into the system suggests that his basketball IQ and professional preparation are exactly what this team needed. But I believe the most significant impact of his presence will be seen in how it affects the offensive spacing and shot distribution that allows other players to operate more effectively within their comfort zones, rather than being forced into roles that don't maximize their specific skill sets. What's particularly encouraging about Kennard's early performances is not just the shooting percentage he's maintaining, which is elite by any standard, but the way he's managing to find quality looks within the flow of the offense, without disrupting the rhythm or chemistry that the core group has been working to establish throughout the season, suggesting that his basketball intelligence and understanding of team concepts are exactly what championship organizations look for when making strategic additions during crucial stretches of the season. However, the question that needs to be addressed moving forward is whether the coaching staff will provide both Kennard and Hachimura with sufficient shot attempts to truly maximize their impact, because having elite shooters on the roster means nothing if they're not empowered to be aggressive and confident in their shot selection, particularly during crucial moments when games are decided by execution and mental toughness rather than pure talent or favorable circumstances. Jake LaRavia's emergence as a reliable contributor off the bench represents exactly the kind of positive development that intelligent Lakers supporters have been predicting since the moment he joined the bag. Organization, providing energy, versatility, professionalism, and precisely the kind of steady presence that championship teams require from their role players during crucial moments when games are decided by effort, execution, and basketball IQ, rather than pure talent. But somehow, his consistent excellence gets overlooked by critics who seem determined to focus on temporary struggles rather than acknowledging the obvious signs of organizational depth and player development that separate well-managed franchises from teams that struggle to identify and maximize talent throughout their roster construction and development programs. I believe LaRavia's success should serve as irrefutable evidence of how the Lakers organization continues to excel at player evaluation, development, and roster construction, despite facing constant criticism from people who apparently lack the basketball knowledge necessary to recognize quality when they see it. Because his improvement represents exactly the kind of systematic approach to building championship depth that separates elite organizations from franchises that rely solely on star power without developing the kind of comprehensive roster strength that determines playoff success when every possession matters. Opponent preparation becomes exponentially more detailed and focused. And the difference between winning and losing often comes down to which team has the more reliable and confident role players who can execute their assignments without hesitation or fear. The chemistry development between Luka Doncic, LeBron James, and Austin Reeves continues to represent exactly what any intelligent basketball observer would expect from three elite players who are still learning each other's tendencies, preferences, and basketball instincts while dealing with the kinds of external pressures and unrealistic expectations that casual fans place on every Lakers combination without understanding the actual timeline required for championship-level chemistry to develop organically through repetition, trust building, and the kind of shared experiences that can't be manufactured in practice or forced through media pressure and fan demands for immediate perfection, that ignore the complex realities of professional basketball development. Here's another question that critics seem incapable of answering with any degree of intellectual honesty. How exactly do people expect three players to develop the kind of seamless chemistry that defines championship teams when they've been limited to such a small sample size of games played together due to various injuries, load management decisions, and the kind of roster availability issues that have affected virtually every NBA team this season, but somehow only become a problem when they involve the Lakers and their pursuit of championship excellence? Their limited opportunities to build chemistry makes their occasional flashes of brilliance even more impressive, rather than disappointing, because the brief glimpses they've provided of their potential suggest they could develop into something truly special if given sufficient time, repetition, and the patience that championship organizations provide to elite talents who are worth the investment in long-term development rather than short-term gratification that satisfies critics but doesn't build sustainable success. The Jackson Hayes ankle injury that occurred during the Boston game represents exactly the kind of unfortunate timing that has plagued this Lakers season, with injury complications that seem to occur at the worst possible moments. But here's what critics conveniently ignore when they're busy blaming the organization for circumstances completely beyond their control. How many other teams in the league could lose a key rotation player during a crucial stretch of the season and still maintain competitive intensity against quality opponents, while adjusting their tactical approach to accommodate roster limitations that would cripple organizations with less depth? Coaching flexibility and championship experience throughout their organizational structure? Hayes' absence creates tactical challenges that require creative solutions, places additional pressure on remaining players to handle expanded responsibilities, and tests exactly the kind of organizational resilience that championship teams must demonstrate throughout long seasons when injuries, fatigue, and adverse circumstances threaten to derail progress toward ultimate goals. But somehow, this gets portrayed as a Lakers problem, rather than recognition that this organization continues to compete at the highest level, despite facing obstacles that would devastate teams with less talent, coaching quality, and championship DNA that defines successful franchises throughout their operational philosophy. Tuesday night's 110-109 result against the Orlando Magic provides a perfect example of how media narratives and casual fan reactions completely miss the actual basketball story that was unfolding on the court, because anyone who actually watched that game rather than simply looking at the final score would have seen a Lakers team that controlled significant portions of the contest, executed beautiful offensive sequences, demonstrated exactly the kind of championship-level talent that makes them legitimate title contenders when everything comes together properly, only to encounter exactly the kind of unfortunate circumstances, questionable officiating decisions, and sheer bad luck that can affect any game regardless of talent levels, preparation quality, or competitive intensity that teams bring to crucial matchups. But here's the question that nobody seems willing to ask with any degree of analytical rigor. How exactly is it the Lakers' fault that Orlando shot historically poorly from three-point range through the first 3 quarters but still managed to hang around because of favorable officiating calls, lucky bounces, and the kind of random basketball variance that can affect any individual game but doesn't reflect the underlying quality, talent level, or championship potential of either organization, particularly when you consider that Orlando needed every possible favorable circumstance to steal a victory, despite being thoroughly outplayed for significant stretches of the contest? The fact that Orlando needed to shoot only 24% from three-point range through 3 quarters and still required multiple fortunate circumstances, questionable calls, and random variance to steal a victory says everything you need to know about the talent differential between these teams and the Lakers' ability to compete with anyone when they're not fighting against circumstances completely beyond their control or dealing with the kind of officiating inconsistencies that can influence game outcomes. Let's talk about Luka's decision in the final seconds, and here's where the basketball ignorance of casual critics becomes absolutely laughable, because anyone who has actually played competitive basketball understands that split-second decisions in high-pressure situations involve infinitely more complexity than armchair analysts can comprehend from their couches. Because players are processing defensive positioning, clock management, teammate movement, shot quality, and countless other variables that casual observers never notice, but that determine the difference between good looks and great looks in crucial moments when games are decided by execution, mental toughness, and basketball intelligence rather than luck or favorable circumstances. Luka's choice to create a better look for LeBron James, rather than forcing a contested three-pointer, demonstrates exactly the kind of basketball IQ and team-first mentality that separates elite players from selfish scorers who prioritize personal statistics over team success. But somehow, this gets criticized by people who apparently believe that hero ball and isolation plays represent superior basketball strategy, compared to the kind of unselfish decision-making that defines championship teams throughout NBA history, and continues to separate the Lakers organization from franchises that lack the championship culture necessary to make optimal choices during pressure-packed situations, when the difference between winning and losing often comes down to split-second decisions that require incredible basketball intelligence and composure. Thinking about this sequence more deeply, wasn't Luka's instinct to find the best available shot, rather than forcing a difficult attempt exactly the kind of basketball wisdom that championship teams need from their stars? Particularly when you consider that he was being defended by a quality opponent who was clearly focused on preventing him from getting a clean look at a game-winning three-pointer. The fact that the final execution didn't result in a made shot doesn't invalidate the decision-making process that led to what appeared to be a reasonable opportunity for one of the greatest clutch performers in basketball history to attempt a game-winning shot. And criticizing the decision rather than acknowledging the unfortunate outcome reveals exactly the kind of results-oriented thinking that fails to recognize the difference between good process and random variance that can affect any individual possession, regardless of preparation or execution quality. Paolo Banchero's performance, particularly his 17 points in the third quarter that kept Orlando competitive when they should have been falling further behind, represents exactly what happens when talented individual players get hot during temporary stretches that have absolutely nothing to do with defensive breakdowns, scheme failures, or any other systematic issues that critics love to blame on Lakers coaching or preparation. Because basketball remains a game where individual brilliance can temporarily override even the best defensive game plans. And acting like the Lakers should somehow prevent every opposing player from ever having good games demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of competitive basketball realities that exist at the highest level of professional sports, where elite athletes are capable of extraordinary performances regardless of opponent quality or defensive schemes. Banchero's 36 points and 10 rebounds weren't the result of Lakers' defensive failures. They were evidence of a talented young player having one of those special nights that occur throughout every NBA season regardless of opponent quality, defensive preparation, or strategic game planning. And the fact that the Lakers kept this game competitive, despite facing an individual performance of that caliber, should be viewed as evidence of their resilience, depth, and championship potential, rather than somehow being twisted into criticism of defensive preparation, execution quality, or competitive intensity that this organization brings to every game regardless of circumstances or opposition strength. The sequence that allowed Wendell Carter Jr. to grab what's being called the game-winning offensive rebound deserves context that critics seem determined to ignore. 3 Lakers players were in position to secure that rebound, which means the defensive scheme worked exactly as designed and players were where they needed to be according to their assignments. But sometimes in basketball, despite perfect positioning and proper execution, balls bounce in directions that favor offensive players rather than defensive players. And pretending like this represents some kind of fundamental failure, rather than simple basketball variance, reveals exactly the kind of analytical superficiality that characterizes most Lakers criticism. from people who apparently expect this team to achieve perfection in every single possession, while other organizations get praised for achieving far less with significantly more favorable circumstances, easier, competitive schedules. I believe this type of random basketball occurrence reveals absolutely nothing about focus, preparation, competitive intensity, or systematic execution, because championship teams understand that individual possessions can be affected by luck, bounces, and circumstances beyond anyone's control, which is why they focus on process, execution, and systematic improvement, rather than allowing single plays or random variants to impact their confidence, preparation, or long-term development toward championship excellence that requires sustained execution over many games rather than perfection in individual moments that can be influenced by factors completely beyond anyone's control. The reaction from Lakers fans following this game reflects not disappointment with the team's effort, execution, or preparation, but justifiable frustration with external circumstances, officiating inconsistencies, and the kind of random variance that can affect any individual game but doesn't reflect the underlying talent, coaching quality, or championship potential that this organization possesses in abundance, despite facing constant criticism from people who apparently expect perfection, while other teams get praised for achieving significantly less impressive results with more favorable circumstances. Easier schedules and less challenging competitive environments that don't test organizational character and resilience. This pattern of facing adversity while maintaining competitive excellence has become so predictable that intelligent Lakers supporters are beginning to approach games with the kind of confidence typically reserved for people who understand that temporary setbacks represent opportunities for growth, character building, and the kind of championship preparation that separates elite organizations from franchises that crumble under pressure when circumstances become challenging, rather than using adversity as motivation for achieving even higher levels of excellence that define sustainable success in professional sports. The recent appointment of Lon Rosen as President of Business Operations represents exactly the kind of strategic organizational improvement that demonstrates new owner Mark Walters' commitment to bringing the same level of excellence that has defined the Los Angeles Dodgers' unprecedented success to the Lakers organization, because Rosen's track record of revenue growth, fan engagement, marketing innovation, and operational excellence with the back-to-back World Series champion Dodgers provides exactly the kind of business leadership that championship organizations require to support their on-court ambitions with world-class operational infrastructure that can compete with any franchise in professional sports. What makes Rosen's appointment particularly significant is not just his impressive resume with the Dodgers, but his previous connection to the Lakers organization during their championship era, and his long-standing relationship with franchise legend Magic Johnson, which provides organizational continuity and institutional knowledge that connects the current team to its championship heritage while bringing fresh perspectives and innovative approaches that have proven successful with one of the most successful sports franchises in recent memory, suggesting that this transition represents evolution rather than revolution in how the Lakers approach their business operations and organizational development. The clarification regarding Magic Johnson's role provides exactly the kind of organizational transparency that Lakers fans deserve, while addressing speculation that has surrounded the franchise legend's potential involvement since Walters' ownership transition was completed. And here's what makes this arrangement particularly intelligent from an organizational perspective. Johnson will maintain his connection to the franchise and provide the kind of championship wisdom and institutional knowledge that can benefit the organization without creating the kind of operational complications or authority conflicts that could undermine the current leadership structure that's working to build sustainable success. I believe this approach represents optimal franchise management because it allows the organization to benefit from Johnson's incredible basketball intelligence, championship experience, and institutional knowledge without creating the kind of role confusion or authority conflicts that previously contributed to organizational instability when his responsibilities weren't clearly defined, and his relationship with front office leadership became complicated by unclear expectations and communication issues that ultimately led to his departure from the organization during a crucial period in franchise development. Today's confirmation that Rob Pelinka will remain as president of basketball operations with expanded support from Dodgers executives Andrew Friedman and Farhan Zaidi represents exactly the kind of organizational stability and strategic enhancement that championship franchises employ when they're building towards sustained excellence, rather than making reactive changes based on temporary challenges or external criticism from people who don't understand the complexity of building championship teams in the modern NBA environment, where talent acquisition, salary cap management, and organizational culture require years of systematic development rather than quick fixes that satisfy critics but don't address underlying challenges. However, the fan reaction to this decision reveals the kind of passionate frustration that demonstrates how deeply Lakers supporters care about championship excellence and their legitimate concerns about whether the current leadership structure can deliver the kind of success that this organization's history and talent level demands. But here's what critics of this decision seem to miss. Pelinka's track record includes building the roster that won the 2020 championship and successfully navigating the complex trade that brought Luka Doncic to Los Angeles, which represents exactly the kind of bold, strategic thinking that championship organizations require from their leadership even when individual decisions don't always work out perfectly according to external expectations or immediate results. The addition of Friedman and Zaidi to Pelinka's support structure represents exactly the kind of collaborative approach that has made the Dodgers one of the most successful organizations in professional sports. And thinking about this arrangement objectively, wouldn't most Lakers fans prefer to see their basketball operations department enhanced with proven winners rather than completely dismantled and rebuilt with unproven leadership during a competitive window, when organizational stability and institutional knowledge become incredibly valuable assets that can't be replaced easily or quickly through external hiring that might disrupt progress toward championship goals? The hiring of Tony Bennett as NBA draft advisor represents exactly the kind of strategic addition that demonstrates this organization's commitment to excellence in every aspect of basketball operations. Because Bennett's track record of developing high-character, high-IQ players at Virginia combined with his experience producing NBA talent makes him an invaluable resource for an organization that needs to maximize every draft opportunity while building the kind of organizational culture that can support championship aspirations with players who understand their roles and execute them with professional excellence that defines successful teams. What makes Bennett's appointment particularly significant is his proven ability to identify and develop exactly the kind of players that championship teams need. Intelligent, fundamentally sound, team-first individuals who can contribute within structured systems rather than requiring elaborate accommodations or special treatment that can disrupt team chemistry and organizational culture, suggesting that his influence will be felt not just in draft evaluation, but in the overall approach to roster construction and player development that could benefit the organization for years to come as they continue building towards sustained championship excellence. The announcement of plans to expand the front office this summer represents exactly the kind of systematic organizational improvement that championship franchises employ when they're building infrastructure to support sustained excellence, rather than hoping that individual talent alone can overcome institutional limitations. And here's what makes this approach particularly intelligent. Rather than making dramatic changes that could disrupt current progress, the organization is choosing to enhance existing strengths with additional resources and expertise that can address specific areas for improvement without creating unnecessary instability during a competitive period when organizational focus should be directed towards supporting on-court success. I believe this comprehensive approach to organizational development demonstrates exactly the kind of long-term thinking that separates championship franchises from teams that make reactive decisions based on short-term frustration rather than strategic planning that addresses underlying challenges while building sustainable competitive advantages that can benefit the organization for years to come. Because the most successful teams in professional sports are those that continuously evolve and improve their operations while maintaining stability in core areas that are working effectively toward championship goals. The season ticket price increases for 26-27 represent exactly the kind of confident organizational decision that demonstrates new ownership's commitment to providing championship-level experiences, while investing the resources necessary to compete at the highest level of professional basketball. But more importantly, this decision reflects the organization's confidence in their ability to deliver championship results that justify increased investment from their loyal supporters who deserve the best possible product on and off the court, suggesting that these increases are tied to specific improvements in fan experience, facility upgrades, and competitive investment, rather than simply profit-maximizing decisions that ignore fan satisfaction and organizational accountability. Thinking about this decision from a broader business perspective, isn't it encouraging that new ownership is willing to make investments in the organization that demonstrate their commitment to championship excellence, rather than operating with the kind of cost-cutting mentality that has characterized some franchises that prioritize profit margins over competitive success? Particularly when you consider that successful sports franchises typically generate more revenue through sustained winning than through short-term price increases that aren't supported by corresponding improvements in product quality and fan experience. Bronnie James's continued development with the South Bay Lakers represents exactly the kind of systematic player development and organizational patience that championship franchises employ when nurturing young talent rather than rushing players into roles they're not ready to handle, because intelligent organizations understand that proper development takes time, repetition, and gradually increasing responsibility rather than immediate NBA minutes that could actually hurt long-term development if players aren't adequately prepared for the physical, mental, and competitive demands of performing at the highest level of professional basketball, where mistakes get magnified and confidence can be damaged by premature exposure to situations that exceed current ability levels. His development trajectory follows exactly the same pattern that has produced championship contributors throughout Lakers history. Because this organization understands how to identify talent, provide proper development opportunities, and gradually increase responsibility as players demonstrate readiness for expanded roles rather than making emotional decisions based on family connections, media pressure, or external expectations that have nothing to do with basketball readiness, competitive preparation, or organizational needs that require players to contribute meaningfully to championship aspirations rather than simply occupying roster spots based on factors unrelated to basketball ability and professional development. Looking toward the future and potential offseason moves, the persistent rumors connecting the Lakers to players like Giannis Antetokounmpo represent exactly the kind of organizational ambition and championship vision that separates elite franchises from teams that settle for mediocrity. Because while other organizations hope to maybe make the playoffs and possibly win a round or two, the Lakers continue to think bigger, plan more strategically, and position themselves to acquire the kind of transformational talent that defines championship dynasties, rather than simply accepting whatever talent they currently possess as sufficient for their ultimate goals that require continuous improvement and strategic enhancement of roster strength, organizational depth, and competitive positioning. Here's a final question that critics seem incapable of answering with any degree of intellectual honesty. Which other organization in the NBA consistently attracts attention from elite players who want to win championships, play in marquee markets, and represent franchises with the kind of championship culture and historical excellence that makes every season a legitimate title opportunity, rather than simply hoping to reach respectability or maybe achieve unexpected success during favorable circumstances that rarely align for organizations without the Lakers' institutional advantages? Championship experience and organizational commitment to sustained excellence that continues to separate this franchise from pretenders who mistake temporary success for sustainable greatness that defines true championship organizations. The potential buyout market additions and trade possibilities could provide exactly the kind of depth, experience, and championship-level talent that transforms good teams into great teams. But more importantly, their interest in joining this Lakers organization demonstrates the continuing appeal of playing for a franchise that represents championship excellence, market prominence, and the kind of organizational culture that attracts winners rather than players who are satisfied with moral victories, personal statistics, or individual achievements rather than ultimate team success that defines professional careers and creates lasting legacies that matter long after individual seasons are forgotten and remembered only for their contribution to championship pursuits. I believe this comprehensive analysis of the current Lakers situation reveals exactly what any objective basketball observer would expect from a championship organization that continues to compete at the highest level while building toward future excellence despite facing constant criticism from people who apparently expect perfection, while other teams get praised for achieving significantly less impressive results with more favorable circumstances, better injury luck, easier schedule situations, and less challenging competitive environments that make their success appear more impressive than it actually represents when examined through the lens of competitive reality, rather than media narratives and casual fan expectations that ignore the complex variables that affect team performance throughout long seasons when health, luck, and external factors can influence individual results without reflecting underlying quality, organizational strength, or long-term championship potential that defines elite franchises. The upcoming stretch of games provides exactly the kind of championship preparation and competitive testing that elite organizations require during their development toward ultimate success. Because facing quality opponents, overcoming adversity, and maintaining competitive excellence despite challenging circumstances represents precisely the kind of experience that transforms talented rosters into championship teams capable of achieving sustained success rather than temporary achievement that disappears when circumstances become challenging or pressure increases during crucial moments when champions separate themselves from pretenders who lack the mental toughness, organizational support, and championship culture necessary to perform at their highest level when it matters most for achieving the ultimate goal of NBA championship excellence that represents the only standard worthy of Lakers basketball.